Episode 589, 3 Ways to Thank Administrators. Today's sponsor is the U.S. Toyota Dream Car Art Contest. Stay tuned at the end of this show to learn how students in the United States can enter this inspiring contest and get lesson plans to design a dream car that makes the world a better place.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
So today we're talking with one of my dear friends, Dr. Frank Buck, author of Get Organized, Time Management for School Leaders, one of my favorite time management book for administrators. And today, Frank, you've been an administrator for many years. You've also worked in a classroom, and we're talking about how to be thankful for our administrators and to show that. Because, you know, one thing about being an administrator, and I've obviously got lots of friends who are, is that all of the problems flow up, but sometimes the thanks don't. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The principalship can be the loneliest of places. I'm in a couple of Facebook groups for principals, and I never cease to be amazed at some of the conditions under which especially the younger principals work. You know, and as a teacher, at least you have a few other people on your grade level that you can turn to for support. But when you're the principal, like you said, the problems flow to the top and you spend your entire day helping other people solve problems. But how do you keep going day after day with your own challenges?
And so many times principals cannot disclose all the aspects of the problem they're solving to those who are involved.
Absolutely. You've got lawyers involved sometimes, and you would like to be able to pass on information that you just simply cannot. And other people don't always understand that.
Yeah, in the days of social media, people just jump in and really want to criticize without having all the facts. And you know they don't have the facts, but you can't do anything about it. We've kind of set the stage for what would sound like a perfect storm for principals. Now, teachers, you know that I always sympathize and empathize, and we know that we have a difficult time too. But today, we want to think about our administrators. So, Frank, what can we do to kind of show thankfulness and appreciation to our administrators?
Okay. I've got 3 ideas for you today, and I know that this will air sometime around Thanksgiving. So let's start with this one. What if everybody wrote a card to the principal or assistant principal, not just saying something like, thanks for all you do, but being specific, something like, thanks for the time that you stood up to me when Mrs. So-and-so wanted to have me fired. That was 10 years ago, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about how you went out on a limb for me. Or I'll always remember that day last spring when I got so sick and you volunteered to teach my classes for the rest of the day. Or when David couldn't find his money before the field trip, you probably thought nobody was looking when you went into your own pocket and replaced it. Well, I saw it, and I thank you for it. Imagine those kinds of things. So as a faculty, what if you did sort of like an advent calendar where every day there was a different envelope for the principal to open, starting maybe slightly before Thanksgiving and running up through Christmas, depending on how large your faculty is. And so every day the principal or assistant principal opens that envelope, and there's a card from one of the faculty members with something specific that they're thankful for. And, you know, the thing is this, it's probably going to be something that your principal even forgot happened. So imagine being able to get one of those kinds of cards every day from Thanksgiving through Christmas.
Oh, I love it. And I may have to air this earlier in November so that schools have time to pull this off. What a great idea of just knowing that you have encouragement coming. You know, I keep a folder of Attagirls so that when I have that difficult day, I can open it up and remember a day when I did something right. Since I'm face to face with a day I might not have done something right, or what a great thing to look forward to. Wow.
Yeah. And on those tough days, you know, being able to go back and reread some of those note cards, that can maybe be the thing that gets you through.
Love that. Okay, what's our second?
Okay, here's a second one. Principals often have a tough job delegating. I was one myself. You know, we're focused on trying to take things off of teachers. And as a result, we wind up taking on more and more. And as a result, sometimes we don't have time to do the things that only we can do. So look for some of the things that you see your principal doing that maybe a parent volunteer could do, or even a student can do. And if 2 or 3 teachers got together and brainstormed a list of those things that they were seeing the principals doing, and then just went and got some volunteers and farmed those things out and trained the people on how to handle these different jobs. And then you just go to the principal and say, here's some things that you're no longer going to have to do. And it gives the principal the gift of time, and time is our most valuable resource.
So what were some of those things you did as a principal that people may not know you do that other people could do?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, changing the laminating film on the laminator, because the person who did that position was eliminated. And so instead of giving it to another instructional assistant, I was going and doing that kind of thing myself. And as a first year assistant principal, going down the hall, this was back in the day before everything was on computer and the absentee sheet was a mimeograph piece of paper. I was the one who went down the hall and put those on the doors, and went down the hall and took the little attendance cards off the doors. And one of the teachers, in fact, this was a special education teacher who taught what we called the multi-handed, at that time it's called the trainable mentally handicapped class. She took a young man who had Down syndrome and showed him how to do that job that I was doing every day. He loved it. It gave him a sense of being in the school, and it freed up time for me each and every day. And I thank that teacher for doing that, because I never would have gone and asked someone else to do it.
Wow, that's fantastic. And just finding those things that your principal does is hard. I mean, sometimes you find out, you do that.
Mm-hmm.
So it just took a teacher noticing, didn't it?
Absolutely. Sometimes teachers just really have no idea. Just like as administrators, we often don't know some of the things that teachers are doing, and doing them very silently and behind the scenes. And it works the other way, that principal you'd be amazed at some of the things that they do that you never know about.
I love that. Okay, what's our third?
Okay, the third one is talk about your principal behind his or her back. And I learned this from my first principal, Harry Anderson, the greatest supporter of teachers I've ever known. If you did something well, he would tell you, but mostly he would go and tell somebody else who he knew would spill the beans to you. So here as a teacher, you've got these people coming to you going, you'll never guess what Mr. Anderson said about you. So we can do the same thing for our principal and talk to other people about the good things that we're seeing, so that they're not hearing it necessarily from us. And he's going, what is it this teacher wants? They're buttering me up. But know that they're hearing from a third party. It makes all the difference in the world.
And a lot of times, I even do this on my own podcast because of awesome situation I have and the leadership that I see from my principal. And, he doesn't listen to every podcast, but you do want people to know that you speak well of them. If something great happens, tell everybody. If something not so great happens, go to that one person involved. That's the difference between gossip. You don't want gossip. You want to speak with grace and encouragement in season. And that's one thing I always pray to try to do, is to give that grace and give that encouragement. And we do that when we speak well of people, don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I mentioned Harry Anderson. I just got to tell you this real quickly. I've had the pleasure to write 3 books over my career. And in the second one, on the acknowledgement page, I wrote this: to Harry Anderson, the best first principal a teacher could ever have. And I sent him a copy of the book. Well, several years later, and we're talking a veteran school administrator, Mr. Anderson was one of those, tough as nails on the exterior. And so several years later, we were able to meet for lunch. And now he's, at that time, he was in his early 80s. And he said to me, I keep that book on my nightstand, and I read those words every single night.
Wow.
We have no idea the impact that we can make on someone else as teachers, as we can make on students or to other teachers, or the impact that we can make on our administrators.
And I think that one thing you said is so important is that we need to say positive things, not just when we're asking for something.
Absolutely.
It just needs to be, I messaged my principal, my administrator last week. Thank you for hiring me. This has been awesome. I appreciate the persistence it took to get me on your team. And I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for hiring me. And of course, this is a year and a half later. I didn't have any reason to be telling him that, except I was just so grateful to be where I am.
And we assume they know, but they don't. And so much of a principal's day is spent with the bad news and handling. Well, as another principal once said to me, the principalship is nothing more than handling other people's problems. And it's a shame that he had to have that attitude. We can change that so that our principal says, this is the greatest job in the world, and I'm in the greatest place in the world with the greatest people in the world.
Oh, don't we all want that? We do want that. Well, thank you, Frank. You're such a great resource for administrators and for teachers. I think you do a great job of helping us work together. And when you build that community of educators who's happy to be there, when you have visionary administrators, I remember our administrator stood up and had all the staff there and said, you know what? All of us are teachers. Every single one of you are educators. All of you are interacting with students. All of you teach. It was just so empowering. We had a senior night Friday night, and one person was thanking one of the maintenance supervisors for what he meant to his life. And you're like, yep, that's the kind of place we work, where everybody knows that we're on a mission to educate kids, to love kids, and to change lives. This is awesome. Thanks, Frank.
Absolutely. Vicki, what a pleasure to be with you today. As always, this is the third or fourth podcast that we've done together. And it's just always so refreshing to be a guest with you.
Today's sponsor is the U.S. Toyota Dream Car Art Contest. It opens November 1st, 2019 through January 31st, 2020. It's for youth ages 4 through 15 in the United States. In the U.S. Toyota Dream Car Art Contest, students are invited to submit hand-drawn artwork answering this question. If you could design a car to make the world a better place, what would it look like? Teachers can also download a free standards-aligned lesson plans on car design that includes both STEM concepts and art. That makes this an excellent cross-curricular project. Visit www.toyotadreamcarusa.com/coolcat. There you can download artwork guidelines, official rules, an entry form, and the lesson plan to prepare your Toyota Dream Car USA artwork submissions today. Remember, that's at toyotadreamcarusa.com/coolcat. I challenge you to think ahead now. How are you going to thank your administrators? Are there some ideas in today's show that you could use? Or can you get creative with some of your friends and colleagues and think of something that would really show appreciation for your administrators? It's a better place to work when all of us do appreciate one another.